At the center of this tragic narrative were three individuals whose lives became deeply intertwined. Joshua Carter, a charismatic local businessman, Emma Roberts, a dedicated elementary school teacher, and Mia Collins, a newcomer with a mysterious past. Their fates collided in a perfect storm of desire, jealousy, and deceit, resulting in 2 deaths and leaving the third forever changed. Joshua Carter, the only child of William and Patricia Carter, was born and raised in Cedarville. From an early age, it was evident that Joshua was destined for success. His father, a prominent local attorney, instilled in him a strong work ethic and unwavering ambition, while his mother, a former beauty queen turned socialite, taught him charm and social grace. Joshua excelled in both academics and athletics, serving as captain of the high school football team, president of the student council, and valedictorian of his graduating class. After high school, Joshua attended an Ivy League university, where he studied business and economics. However, there was another side to Joshua that few people saw. Behind his winning smile and easy charm lay a calculating mind and an insatiable hunger for control. He was a master manipulator, skilled at identifying people's weaknesses and exploiting them for his gain. Joshua viewed relationships as transactions, always looking for what he could get out of them. Despite his success, Joshua was never satisfied, constantly craving validation and attention. This need manifested in a string of romantic conquests, earning him a reputation as a ladies' man. But as he approached his mid-30s, Joshua began to feel the pressure to settle down, knowing that having a wife would enhance his image as a respectable businessman and community pillar. It was with this mindset that Joshua entered into relationships with both Emma Roberts and Mia Collins. In Emma, he saw the perfect candidate for the role of Mrs. Carter, attractive, well-liked, and from a good family. Mia, on the other hand, represented excitement and passion, a secret indulgence he had no intention of giving up. Little did Joshua know that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse, set in motion by the very women he thought he could control. Emma Roberts epitomized the girl next door. Born and raised in Cedarville, she was the middle child in a family of 5, with 2 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. Her parents, David and Susan Roberts, were pillars of the community. Her father was the town's beloved family doctor, and her mother was a longtime volunteer at the local animal shelter. Emma's childhood was marked by warmth and stability, shaping her into a compassionate and empathetic young woman. After completing her degree, Emma secured a position teaching 3rd grade at Cedarville Elementary School. It was at a local charity event organized to raise funds for the school's new library that Emma first met Joshua Carter. She was immediately drawn to his charisma and confident demeanor. Their courtship was a whirlwind romance, with Joshua wooing Emma with grand gestures, surprise weekend getaways, lavish gifts, and romantic dinners. Emma, who had always led a relatively simple life, fell deeply in love, believing she had found her soulmate. Mia Collins arrived in Cedarville like a gust of wind, stirring up the quiet town with her mysterious past and alluring presence. Unlike Emma and Joshua, Mia was an outsider, having grown up in a series of foster homes across New York State. Her childhood was marked by instability and loneliness, experiences that shaped her into a complex and often unpredictable adult. Born to a teenage mother who struggled with addiction, Mia was placed in the foster care system at the age of 3. Over the next 15 years, she bounced from one home to another, never staying in one place long enough to form lasting connections. This transient lifestyle left Mia with a deep-seated fear of abandonment and a desperate need for love and acceptance. Despite her challenging upbringing, Mia was fiercely intelligent and ambitious. She excelled in school, using her studies as an escape from the chaos of her personal life. Her academic success eventually earned her a scholarship to a prestigious university in New York City, where she studied psychology. After graduation, Mia worked as a marketing executive in Manhattan for several years. Although she was successful in her career, her personal life was a series of short-lived, tumultuous relationships. It was after a particularly painful breakup that Mia decided to leave the city behind and start fresh. Using a modest sum of money, inherited from a former foster mother who had shown her particular kindness, Mia bought a small cottage on the outskirts of Cedarville. Mia quickly caught the attention of the locals with her striking looks and big city sophistication. She found work as a consultant for local businesses, using her marketing expertise to help them expand their reach. It was at one of these consulting jobs that Mia first encountered Joshua Carter. The attraction between them was immediate and electric. In Joshua, Mia saw everything she had ever wanted: success, stability, and the promise of love. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to hope for a happy ending. As Mia and Joshua began their clandestine affair, she convinced herself that she had finally found her place in the world, throwing herself into the relationship with the desperation of someone who had never known true belonging. However, Mia's fragile sense of security was shattered by the revelation of Joshua's engagement to Emma. This betrayal triggered all of Mia's deepest fears and insecurities, setting in motion a tragic chain of events that would leave an indelible mark on the town of Cedarville. As summer turned to fall, the lives of Joshua, Emma, and Mia became increasingly entangled in a complex web of desire, deceit, and jealousy. Joshua, ever the skilled manipulator, carefully navigated his relationships with both women, feeding each of them just enough attention and affection to keep them invested. With Emma, Joshua played the role of the devoted fiancé, attending local events by her side, charming her family at Sunday dinners, and making grand plans for their future together. Emma basked in the glow of their engagement, excitedly sharing details of their upcoming wedding with anyone who would listen. Meanwhile, Joshua's encounters with Mia took place in the shadows. They met in out-of-the-way restaurants in neighboring towns or at Mia's secluded cottage. During these stolen moments, Joshua showered Mia with the passion and intensity that he carefully held back from Emma, feeding Mia's hopes with vague promises of a future together, always with the caveat that he needed time to handle things with Emma. As the weeks passed, tension began to build between Emma and Mia. Although Emma remained unaware of the true nature of Mia's relationship with Joshua, the two women often found themselves at the same local events, with Mia's presence invariably drawing Joshua's attention away from his fiancée. Emma, trusting and naive, initially tried to befriend Mia, sensing the newcomer's loneliness. She invited Mia to girls' nights out and community functions, unwittingly providing more opportunities for Joshua and Mia to cross paths. Mia, consumed by her feelings for Joshua and racked with guilt over betraying Emma's friendly overtures, became increasingly volatile. Her behavior swung between overly solicitous towards Emma and barely concealed hostility. These mood swings did not go unnoticed by the townspeople, who began to speculate about the source of Mia's apparent instability. Joshua observed the growing friction between the two women with a mixture of anxiety and satisfaction. While he worried about his carefully constructed double life unraveling, he also reveled in the knowledge that two beautiful women were competing for his affections. As autumn progressed and the date of Joshua and Emma's wedding drew nearer, the situation became increasingly untenable. Mia's demands for Joshua to leave Emma grew more frequent and desperate, while Emma remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her. Little did any of them know that their actions over the next few months would shatter the peaceful facade of Cedarville and change their lives forever. On a crisp October morning, the day of Joshua and Emma's wedding arrived. The entire town of Cedarville seemed to be in attendance, filling the picturesque white church to capacity. Emma, radiant in a classic white gown, walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her face beaming with joy and love. Joshua stood at the altar, outwardly the picture of a happy groom, but those who knew him well might have noticed a flicker of unease in his eyes, a tension in his shoulders that belied his calm exterior. As he recited his vows, promising to love and cherish Emma for all eternity, his thoughts couldn't help but stray to Mia. Unbeknownst to the happy couple and their guests, Mia was outside the church, hidden from view, but close enough to hear the ceremony. Each word of love and devotion that echoed from within the building was like a dagger to her heart. As the church bells rang out, signaling the completion of the ceremony, Mia felt something inside her snap. The reception that followed was a joyous affair, with the entire town celebrating the union of two of its most beloved residents. Emma danced and laughed, surrounded by friends and family, while Joshua played his role to perfection, ever the charming and attentive new husband. But as the night wore on and the champagne flowed freely, Joshua found his mask slipping. More than once, Emma caught him staring off into the distance, a troubled expression on his face. When she asked what was wrong, he brushed off her concerns with a quick smile and a kiss. As the newlyweds drove off to their honeymoon, tin cans rattling behind their car and well wishes ringing in their ears, neither of them could have imagined the dark turn their lives were about to take. For in the shadows, Mia Collins was already plotting her revenge. In the weeks following Joshua and Emma's wedding, Mia Collins spiraled into a pit of despair and obsession. The life she had imagined for herself, a future with Joshua, had been snatched away, leaving her feeling betrayed and discarded. Her fragile psyche, already damaged by years of abandonment and instability, began to fracture under the weight of her grief and anger. At first, Mia tried to move on. She threw herself into her work, taking on more consulting projects than ever before. She attempted to socialize, accepting invitations to local gatherings and community events. But everywhere she went, she was confronted with reminders of Joshua and Emma's happiness. The newlyweds were the talk of the town, their smiling faces seeming to mock Mia at every turn. As her pain deepened, Mia's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started showing up late to meetings, or missing them entirely. Her appearance, once impeccable, grew disheveled. Concerned neighbors reported seeing her wandering the streets late at night, muttering to herself. But it was Mia's growing obsession with Emma that truly marked her descent into madness. She began stalking the young teacher, following her to and from work and watching her house from a distance. Mia convinced herself that if she could just understand Emma, figure out what made her so special in Joshua's eyes, she could win him back. Mia's cottage became a shrine to her obsession, with walls covered in photos of Emma cut from local newspapers and printouts from social media. As Mia's obsession with Emma grew, her actions became increasingly erratic and dangerous. She began to plot ways to remove Emma from Joshua's life, convinced that doing so would bring him back to her. The situation reached a breaking point one cold November evening when Mia, driven by desperation and a growing sense of hopelessness, decided to confront Emma directly. This confrontation set off a chain of events that would forever alter the lives of everyone involved, leaving a legacy of heartbreak and tragedy in its wake. She created elaborate timelines and diagrams, trying to piece together every detail of Emma's life and her relationship with Joshua. As weeks turned into months, Mia's fantasies grew darker. She began to imagine scenarios where Emma was out of the picture, leaving the path clear for her to reclaim Joshua's affections. At first, these were harmless daydreams. Emma moving away or realizing she didn't love Joshua after all. But gradually, Mia's thoughts turned to murder. She spent hours researching different methods, weighing the pros and cons of each with a detached, almost clinical precision. She created multiple plans, each more elaborate than the last, always careful to cover her tracks and establish alibis. Throughout this time, Mia maintained sporadic contact with Joshua. Their encounters were brief and increasingly tense, with Mia alternating between desperate pleas for him to leave Emma and icy accusations of betrayal. Joshua, growing uncomfortable with Mia's intensity, began to distance himself, unaware of the dangerous turn her obsession had taken. As winter settled over Cedarville, Mia's plans began to crystallize. She had chosen her method, a staged hit-and-run accident that would leave no trace of her involvement. In her deluded mind, she convinced herself that eliminating Emma was not just for her own benefit but for Joshua's as well. She truly believed he was trapped in an unhappy engagement and that she would be liberating him. The night before she planned to carry out her deadly scheme, Mia stood in front of her mirror, barely recognizing the wild-eyed woman staring back at her. For a brief moment, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind, but then she remembered the sound of wedding bells, the sight of Joshua kissing Emma, and her resolve hardened once more. On a foggy Wednesday morning in February, Emma left her house for her daily jog, just as she had done countless times before. The streets were quiet, most of Cedarville's residents still tucked away in their warm beds. Emma, with her bright yellow running jacket and bouncing ponytail, was a spot of color in the gray landscape. Unbeknownst to Emma, Mia was waiting, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She sat in a stolen car at the end of a secluded stretch of road, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had turned white. As Emma's form appeared through the mist, Mia took a deep breath and turned the key in the ignition. The next few moments passed in a blur of screeching tires, a muffled scream, and the sickening thud of impact. Operating on autopilot, Mia quickly drove away from the scene, leaving Emma's crumpled body on the side of the road. It was a jogger who found Emma an hour later. By then, it was too late. Despite the best efforts of paramedics, Emma was pronounced dead at the scene. The news spread through Cedarville like wildfire, leaving the town reeling in shock and grief. In the immediate aftermath, Mia's plans seemed to work perfectly. The police initially treated the incident as a tragic hit-and-run accident. Mia had meticulously planned her alibi, making sure she was seen at a 24-hour diner in a neighboring town both before and after the time of Emma's death. Joshua, upon hearing the news of his fiancée's death, put on a convincing display of grief. He wept openly at the funeral, leaning on friends and family for support. To all outward appearances, he was a devastated man struggling to come to terms with his loss. But as the initial shock wore off and the investigation deepened, cracks began to appear in the facade. Detective Lisa Montague, assigned to the case, sensed there was more to Emma's death than a simple accident. As she dug deeper, she began to uncover the tangled web of relationships that had led to this tragic event. Meanwhile, Mia watched from the sidelines, a mix of guilt and triumph warring within her. She had achieved her goal. Emma was gone. Now surely Joshua would be hers. But as the days passed and Joshua remained distant, doubt began to creep into her mind. Had she made a terrible mistake? In the weeks following Emma's death, Cedarville was shrouded in a pall of grief and suspicion. The once friendly neighbors now eyed each other warily, wondering if a killer walked among them. Detective Montague's investigation sent ripples through the community. As she interviewed friends, family, and acquaintances of Emma, Joshua maintained his role as the grieving fiancé, making tearful appearances on local news channels and offering a substantial reward for information leading to the arrest of Emma's killer. He threw himself into charity work in Emma's name, establishing a foundation to support local education initiatives. Mia, meanwhile, struggled to maintain her composure. The guilt of her actions weighed heavily on her, manifesting in bouts of insomnia and panic attacks. She obsessively followed the news of the investigation, terrified that each day would bring a knock on her door from the police. As Detective Montague delved deeper into Emma's life, she began to uncover inconsistencies in Joshua's story. Several witnesses reported seeing him arguing with Emma in the weeks leading up to her death. Financial records showed large, unexplained withdrawals from their joint account. The detective's attention also turned to Mia. Her erratic behavior in the months prior to Emma's death had not gone unnoticed, and her sudden calm in the aftermath raised suspicions. When questioned, Mia's alibi seemed airtight, but Montague sensed she was hiding something. As winter gave way to spring, Mia's initial elation at having eliminated her rival began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of unease. Despite her expectations, Joshua had not rushed into her arms in the wake of Emma's death. In fact, he had become increasingly distant, avoiding her calls and making excuses to cancel their planned meetings. Frustrated and confused, Mia decided to confront Joshua at his office after hours. As she approached the building, she noticed a light on in his window. Peering inside, she saw Joshua in an intimate embrace with a woman she did not recognize. The sight sent Mia reeling, her world crumbling around her. In that moment, the full weight of what she had done came crashing down on Mia. She had murdered an innocent woman, destroyed countless lives, all for a man who had never truly cared for her. The realization was devastating. Overwhelmed by guilt and anger, Mia stormed into Joshua's office, catching him and the unknown woman by surprise. What followed was a heated confrontation, with Mia unleashing years of pent-up pain and rage. She accused Joshua of using her, of manipulating her feelings to get rid of Emma. Joshua, his carefully constructed facade finally cracking, didn't deny her accusations. Instead, he coldly informed Mia that she had served her purpose and was no longer needed. He threatened to expose her role in Emma's death if she didn't disappear from his life for good. Shattered and desperate, Mia fled the office, her mind racing. She now realized the true extent of Joshua's manipulation and her own terrible mistake. As she drove home in a daze, Mia was unaware that her confrontation with Joshua had been witnessed by someone else. Someone who would soon set in motion the final act of this tragic play. The woman Mia had seen with Joshua was Olivia Chen, a brilliant young lawyer who had recently joined Joshua's firm. Olivia had been drawn into an affair with Joshua, seduced by his charm and the promise of career advancement. However, unlike Mia, Olivia was not blind to Joshua's true nature. On the night of Mia's confrontation with Joshua, Olivia had hidden herself in an adjoining room, overhearing every word of their heated exchange. The revelation of Joshua's involvement in his fiancée's death left her cold with horror and disgust. In the days that followed, Olivia found herself grappling with a moral dilemma. She knew she should go to the police with what she had learned, but fear of professional repercussions and her own complicity in the affair held her back. As she observed Joshua continuing to play the role of grieving fiancé, her revulsion grew. Determined to uncover the full truth, Olivia began her own covert investigation. She meticulously combed through Joshua's files and emails, slowly piecing together the extent of his deceit. What she discovered went far beyond Emma's murder, revealing a pattern of fraud and manipulation that spanned years. With each new revelation, Olivia's resolve strengthened. She knew what she had to do. Armed with the evidence she had gathered, Olivia confronted Joshua in his office late one evening. She laid out everything she had discovered, from his manipulation of Mia to his fraudulent business practices. Joshua, realizing the precariousness of his situation, attempted to charm and threaten Olivia into silence. But Olivia was prepared. She had secretly recorded their entire conversation, capturing Joshua's implicit admission of guilt. As she turned to leave, intending to take her evidence to the police, Joshua snapped. In a moment of panic and rage, he attacked Olivia, attempting to wrestle the recording device from her hands. What Joshua didn't know was that Olivia, haunted by the fate of Emma, had come prepared. In the struggle, she managed to reach into her purse and pull out a small pistol. A shot rang out, echoing through the empty office building. Joshua Carter, the man who had manipulated so many, who had indirectly caused the death of his fiancée and the ruin of Mia Collins, crumpled to the floor. Olivia stood over him, the smoking gun still in her hand, a mix of shock and grim satisfaction on her face. As sirens wailed in the distance, Olivia calmly sat down to wait for the police. She knew that her actions would have consequences, but she also knew that the truth would finally come to light. Joshua Carter's reign of deception was over. The shot that killed Joshua Carter reverberated through Cedarville, setting off a chain reaction that would finally bring the full story of Emma's death to light. As Olivia Chen was taken into custody, the true extent of Joshua's manipulations began to unravel. In the wake of Joshua Carter's death, the investigation into Emma's murder took on new urgency. Detective Montague, armed with the evidence Olivia had gathered, began to piece together the full picture of events that had transpired over the past year. Mia Collins, racked with guilt and fear, finally broke down under questioning. She confessed to her role in Emma's death, providing a detailed account of her actions and motivations. Her testimony painted a damning picture of Joshua's manipulation and the extent to which he had orchestrated the events leading to his fiance's murder. Mia, having confessed to Emma's murder, was sentenced to life in prison. Olivia's case was more complex. She was convicted of manslaughter, but received a reduced sentence due to the circumstances surrounding Joshua's death. The tragic tale of Joshua Carter, Emma Holbrook, Mia Collins, and Olivia Chen would be remembered for years to come, a somber reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath even the most picturesque surfaces.